I'm Bryce Butler from Access Ventures, and this is More Than Profit, a show where I talk with founders, investors, entrepreneurs, and leaders of all kinds about living and working with purpose, how they do it, and why. My guest today has been a freelance writer for Time and Essence. She's co-produced Oprah Winfrey's first Google Hangout, and as well as President Obama's annual State of the Union Hangout. Interned at the White House, and been a community organizer for the National Organization for Women. More than that, she's been described as a modern-day Johnny Tillman, who was a well-known welfare activist throughout the middle of the past century. Rose Afriye is a person I have come to admire immensely for her passion and maturity as she thinks deeply about ways to fix the broken American welfare system that leaves vulnerable people without access to available public assistance. Her story is powerful, and she went into tech because she believes writing software is a superpower that people of color and women should have exposure to. She and an all-female team have built an impressive technology product that was initially incubated at the prestigious Y Combinator Accelerator. Her devotion to helping lift up the lives of others began early in her life from personal experiences that have since shaped who she is and what she's about.
I am a Bronx native. I'm also first generation Ghanaian American, and I grew up in public housing in the Bronx. And that was one of my first experiences that really helped me understand that not everyone has access to the same things. And my mom worked and continues to work so hard to support myself and my 4 siblings. And for me, really the biggest impact that her hard work had on my life was her not just being someone who was working, but also her being someone who was going to school for nursing school when I was at a very young age. And so I think, the idea of her not just being in public housing, but also having to get access to food programs such as the WIC program, it meant that public support was so critical for her being able to strive towards her dreams.
Yeah.
So it was the difference between her having to use her own money to pay for books, for transportation to school. And so in that way, I like to think of public support not just as the direct aid that people receive, but as the potential for economic opportunity, because all of those resources are repurposed for what people are really striving to achieve. And my mother has now been a cardiac nurse for more than 25 years.
It's fantastic.
And it's really that foundation that made that possible.
That's really impressive to have such an amazing example. A mom with 5 children, working, raising those 5 kids, and going to school at this. I mean, what a burden, but also a joy, I'm sure. It's like this mixture of just the chaos. I have 4 kids, so the chaos.
That's awesome.
It's tiring.
Yeah.
And wanting to be there with your kids for schooling events, but recognizing I need to go do these things for the long-term opportunity for my children. So that's really powerful. So fast forward a little bit. So you go off to school.
Yeah.
Where do you go? What do you study? Why do you study it?
So in college, I studied at the University of Pittsburgh, and I studied English writing fiction and political science. So I wanted both the ability to be able to tell captivating stories about the things that were top of mind for people within my generation. And I also wanted to understand more about why things are the way they are with respect to policies in this country. How are decisions made? What are some of the ways that we can have influence over the processes that govern our everyday lives, whether it's why a grocery store is in our neighborhood or not in our neighborhood, or who exactly gets to decide on how much in benefits that people can really get access to.
Yeah.
And so that was really, really critical for my upbringing. But also really for my educational experiences. And it was there that I really got involved in a lot of causes, such as the Black Action Society. At the time, I wrote for the Pitt News.
Wow.
Yeah, as the opinions editor. So really being able to surface my ability to help persuade or to make an argument that I felt was about advocating for the common good.
So I've got to say that's a very mature decision. So, I mean, listening to you talk about, political science and English writing for these reasons, I don't know if I made those same decisions going into college. So I'm really curious, in high school probably, or what was that the day or the moment you realized this is what I want to go after? Because that's a pretty mature path and a very thoughtful path. Was there something that a mentor or an experience in high school that really shaped that for you?
So I remember, I came and continue to come from a Ghanaian family. And, my parents were very influential over my decisions. And one of the things they said to me is like, Rose, you're absolutely going to be a lawyer. That's where you're going to go. And, we want to support you going to school. And I think the major that would be really helpful towards that would be political science. And so I did some research on that. I was like, that's actually true. But also I'll be able to learn a lot more about the system, how the legislative branch works, the executive branch works, like how decision-making occurs in the U.S. So it was sort of a compromise major due to their urging, I guess. And also, I think just really being able to bring your passion and creativity to change is really important. And so English writing fiction became a huge part of my work as well.
That's really neat. So then you go from there, and I'm looking at your bio, and it's really impressive, but also not what you're doing right now. So I want to get to how you're at Emerald. I mean, I'm sure there's a threads, and we can talk about the threads. Yeah. But it's really interesting. I'm reading like freelance writer for Time and Essence, digital coordinator in communications and a media consultant, co-produced Oprah Winfrey's first Google Plus Hangout and President Obama's annual State of the Union Hangout. I mean, holy cow. Those are awesome. Interned at the White House. So are there any moments there that have kind of shaped, refined, even your own value system, things that you hold dear? There's one of my heroes. I think we all have our heroes. One of my heroes is Colin Powell. I was an Army officer, and he's really been formative for me. And he has these 13 life principles, things that kind of govern how he thinks about community and makes decisions. And so it's always been an interesting way for me to think about leading my team, working in community. If I could ask, are there a couple of principles for Rose that you hold dear that are really important to how you function today, but also, how they were shaped in decisions of what you put yourself into in the past?
Yeah, I think for the work that I do now, but I think really throughout my entire career, equality is really the central value that has really undergirded my work throughout my life. And my first job out of college was working as a community organizer, living in DC, but doing a lot of work throughout the South, the Mid-South, really trying to help women advocate for their rights and join their existing efforts to advocate for their rights. So working on letters to the FDA to influence the first emergency contraception over-the-counter bill was a huge part of my work when I was just in my early 20s. And why? Because I felt that would be a huge step towards equality. And then later, actually working within the government for the White House during the passage of healthcare reform, because I really felt that healthcare and some of these immediate services were so critical to people being able to achieve their desires and live to support their vision of their dreams for their life, right? And I think food really allows me to go full circle with that, right?
It's great. Great segue. I love that.
Yeah.
So talk to us about food.
Yeah. So I'm the executive director of the nonprofit organization Emory Leaf. And our mission is to restore dignity by transforming access to social services. So what does that really mean for us is that we believe in the inherent dignity of all people. And we believe that should be reflected in the way that they engage with the government and government services. And we also know that in being able to access government services like food, it affects all types of other services that people are trying to retain day to day, such as their housing, such as their utility assistance. Because in places like Louisville, where we've only started working in, but are slowly going to be picking up momentum, it's a huge opportunity for us because there are 15 evictions every single day. And a lot of the reasons why people are evicted is because of rent increases that happen every year. And what we see is that if you're able to get SNAP benefits in Louisville, that means an average of $246 towards your household budget. Right?
Which is not insignificant.
Exactly. And something that we believe is one of the key ingredients in being able to solve for the challenges with evictions in Louisville and potentially even across the U.S.
Yeah.
Because getting more resources into households through resources where people are already entitled to them is, I think, a huge path to people being able to achieve economic opportunity and to keep, if you will, the ground level for them.
Yeah, it's neat to hear you talk about its connection to housing, because I think sometimes we disconnect the two. So when the average person I talk to thinks housing, it's brick and mortar, or government housing, it's the projects, or it's subsidized, or it's not this person that it really is struggling with the instability of just attainable housing, and how the smallest amount, $246, could mean the difference between being able to pay the rent, keep the lights on,
absolutely,
and being out on the street, and your children in shelters. Or sleeping on couches. So it's a really powerful thing, just how these things are really interconnected. So I've got a quote from you that I think is really, really interesting. You said once, this was something that I think was lurking around in the background without me noticing it as it relates to kind of in relief. And in my own personal life, I'm the product of public assistance programs. I was raised in the Gun Hill housing projects in Bronx, New York, on Magenta Street. A lot of pride there, which is great.
Yeah.
I had WIC in my family. It's something that you don't really understand until you're older. Having some of this assistance was critical to my family. Talk to me about. I want to get a little bit to the WIC. It's great. I think you recognize that now because you talk about it as you're older. When you were younger, how did you feel? Coming home to the Gun Hill housing projects in the Bronx, knowing that your parents are working unbelievably hard, noticing the WIC boxes and cartons. How did that make you feel as a young person?
Yeah. I mean, I think what's so fascinating about growing up in poverty is that it's not until you're older at times that you actually realize just some of the scarcity involved in your circumstance. So at least growing up in the projects, what I felt is like, oh, the density of so many people living in the same place. Like, this is potentially how everywhere is, and, and I'll never forget just like, you get WIC and it's all of these staples of food as well as just canned milk. So we had cans and cans and cans and cans and cans of milk. And so it felt like, okay, well, we're being taken care of, even though these were resources that were like rationed, and it was just very, it was a very difficult time for my mom, and my grandmother was also raising us, and so I just assumed like, oh, well, everyone's grandma does this, and it wasn't until really I was older that like, oh, like my grandmother raised me because she loves me, but also because it was just really hard for my mom to really parent in the way that maybe she would have liked because she was always working. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people can be potentially denied access to the way they'd like to mother or the way they want to support their children because of financial challenges. And so I remember a lot of that, but I also remember that there was just so much love, and even in the face of just financial challenges, that can go a long way.
For sure. That's great. So at Relief, executive director, what are some of the challenges? I mean, you guys are relatively new, 2014, coming out of Y Combinator, incubated there.
Yeah.
Really, really powerful story, really lofty goal.
Yes.
So today, 2020, what are some of the challenges you're facing as you continue to grow with your team?
Yeah. So I think for us, some of the biggest challenges are figuring out the best ways to grow in tandem with our governments that all administer the program and can have varying levels of capacity to serve people who are in fact eligible. And so we know that in some locations, they have really, really a large and robust staff and budgets to be able to support the administration of the SNAP program. And in other locations, they don't have that degree of staffing and support. So I think really our challenge is to really build a scalable solution that can function with high efficiency and effectiveness, regardless of the location. So I think that that's one of the big challenges. I think the second thing is being really intentional about scale, right? So yes, we have built a really robust tech solution that's powered by eligibility requirements that are publicly available and eligible. But what we've also tried to do is really try to make sure that we have anchor partnerships in locations, that we're not just that tech company that's swooping in, without some type of a pulse of what does the community want? How do we engage them? And so I think one way we've addressed that challenge, and Zarina Mine, our amazing director of development and partnerships, has led this work in being able to engage directly with clients to ask, how was this experience for you? What are some of the things that you want? And Genevieve Nielsen, our CTO, has also done a lot in terms of programming on the back end, like what are the biggest priorities? The surveying clients on what the biggest priorities are for them with respect to the future of SNAP.
Yeah, that's neat. I mean, the stakeholder engagement, the intentionality of that, not growth for growth's sake, but like how can we all win together in this? But it's very difficult, unbelievably difficult, because I could see skepticism from communities. So how do you so coming into Louisville or any community like a Louisville, how do you dispel some of this skepticism or this like, okay, tech company, Chicago, Y Combinator, are you really going to help us, or are you going to make a lot of money off of those are, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think one thing that helps out the gate with this credibility is that we're a nonprofit, and we organized as such because we really wanted to make sure there was no question about the why we are doing this, and that we are doing this for the public benefit.
That's great.
I think the second thing is that we have really started, even though we're going on 6 years old, we started by really being able to provide our basic version of our platform in 44 states. And so we've already had engagement with so many different people in Louisville already. So thousands of people in Louisville, in fact. And so really being able to engage people who've already used our platform and to have them really lead some of the ways in which we want to iterate and perfect our process as we build through all the steps they need to enroll.
Yeah.
Is great. How we build trust.
And then they become almost an on the ground advocate.
Exactly.
And ally. That's great.
Some
of your community organizing.
Yes. Yeah. Many of them have already reached out to Senator Joni Jenkins. Okay. Just sharing like, hey, this is MRelief and I want this in our state.
Awesome.
Right.
That's great.
That's huge for us.
So another challenge, I'm sure you hear, and this is another thing you said, which is great. I love it because it's, but I'm just going to read one you said. I have to say, people say government is slow and bureaucratic. Yeah. But I really love the innovation delivery teams that are thinking through how to problem solve within the government. So another challenge, government's slow and bureaucratic.
Yeah.
But you're excited about that. I mean, you're excited about innovation on GovTech.
Yes, absolutely.
Where many people would never press into that. So what do you say? What do you say to people that like just maybe roll their eyes or like, oh, good luck, let's just let government do government and like let's try to figure it out around government.
Yeah, so I don't think that works. Like I don't think that you can improve the government without the government. So I think that that's been a huge sticking point for us. But I do think that you have to be creative and innovative about what does it mean to engage the government, and how do you address and face roadblocks. So for us, like, yes, SNAP is administered at least countrywide, largely on the state level, and in 10 states as granular as the county level. But it does have a larger agency, the USDA. And so a lot of our first wins were gained by really being able to connect with the chief innovation officers and chief data officers of the USDA and say, hey, how can you democratize data? How can you make it available so that we can provide more access and information to people who are wondering, what are the policy requirements that I need to navigate to know if I'm eligible, right? And so we had some quick wins in the beginning by first going to the USDA instead of going to every county or every state.
Smart.
Right? And then that credibility, I think, ushered in terms of really being able to get our platform in front of people in their locations, I think a little bit more leverage, right? Because we're not just saying like, we're coming in here and we don't know how people are going to respond. We're saying like, hey, we're coming in here. Like just an example recently is North Carolina. And it's like, well, 40,000 people have used our platform already.
Wow.
What do you think? So I think that's a huge opportunity for us to build credibility and think about creative ways, even though it's slow to do like traditional partnerships.
Sure. Right?
That you can do a lot actually with government without going through the traditional route.
That's good. So give me a vision of our community 20 years from now.
Oh, that's a great question. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Because it's like you are passionate. I mean, like you are everything that I've heard is very intentional and deliberate, which is great. And so I sense a real desire that we can do this. And so what does it look like 20 years from now?
Okay. Well, I mean, I would like to be optimistic and say that in 20 years, there will be no poverty, that we'll, abolish poverty, as Martin Luther King has often said. But I think what I see in terms of where we will be with respect to things like services, government services and delivery, is that we will move fully to what we call at Relief the opt-out system, a system where you receive your SNAP benefit card in the mail, and it is on you if you'd like to opt out, but that the government, as an authoritative, reliable source of many data points on your life, has all the information it needs at its disposal to issue benefits to you, whether it's through your local housing agency or through your employer, through your Social Security filings every pay period. Or through other institutions that you patronize that are through the government. We believe that this data sharing will really be activated to ensure that people can have all their needs met on the quickest timeline possible. We also see that a lot of the ways in which we spend our benefits won't be on plastic cards anymore. They'll be really connected to the way that we use technology today, right? So whether it's tapping your phone or tapping whatever device you might be using to connect with people. But the opt-out world is a really exciting vision that we have, and we actually are taking steps towards that right now in Chicago. So we're almost done with the partnership that we have with the Chicago Housing Authority, for them to share data with us for anyone on the wait list who indicates, yes, I'm interested. I'd like to also sign up for SNAP. Wow. So instead of them reapplying and sharing everything else, that's just done automatically. And then we can, if there is an additional question, then we'll ask it. But if there's no questions, which in some cases there aren't, then we can actually just facilitate your card being sent.
Rose is the executive director of Relief, an all-women software development team based in Chicago that has built an easy-to-use platform that allows Americans to sign up for SNAP. They're on a mission this year to serve over 1 million families, and you can learn more about Relief and their work by going to mrelief.com and find out how you can help families in need of food. Relief is also a part of the Reconstruct Challenge, an initiative of Access Ventures to make equitable housing more accessible for everyone through new and innovative solutions. You can learn about the Reconstruct Challenge and the work of Access Ventures at accessventures.org. Again, if you've liked what you've heard, drop us a review, subscribe, and stay tuned for next week's episode. I'm Bryce Butler. Thanks for listening.